Thanks for coming to this panel. We're really happy to be here. We're going to be talking about, with these three wonderful people, about how they kind of work inside of their city agencies day in, day out. We have Chad Misiuk from SEMCOG, who's a planner. He's from Southeast Michigan. SEMCOG is the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments and works as the MPO in that area. We've got Madhury Ray, who is an analyst at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. You just heard her speak previously. And we've got Matt Gardner, who's a developer with the NYC Planning Labs, and he does wonderful development every day. I get to work with these people all the time, so when we were building this panel, I know what they do a little bit, and I wanted to talk to them about their workflows so we could see how people in smart cities are actually doing things in unique ways. So, Chad, I'm going to start with you. Can you do a short intro to everyone, what you do kind of day in, day out, and how you do your work?
Yeah, so I work on the data analysis group at SEMCOG, and I'm responsible for doing a lot of data visualization as well as data maintenance and collecting data for the many uses in our agency. But I end up making a lot of maps, a lot of web maps, so ultimately using Cardo and other things to do that. And yeah, that's about it.
And next we'll go to Didi.
So I work at the health department in emergency preparedness and response, which you may know if you were at my talk a second ago. So our job is very interesting because it's really two jobs. We have a day-to-day job, which is really like building infrastructure so that when everything fails in a disaster, we can quickly, I guess for us, at least describe that failure. Also, I make pretty things.
And Matt.
Sure. Yeah, as Jeff said, I'm a web developer for the city planning department. I work for the city planning department's planning labs team, and so I primarily build patterns for the team and the community, software patterns that are reusable to solve a lot of technology needs. And the team specifically, we work together to build bespoke technology solutions for urban planners and the community at large.
So we're going to start a conversation about tools and workflow and sort of the fine balance that it takes to have control over getting the work done in fairly complicated environments or kind of knowing what tool to choose. So I'm going to ask each person to kind of talk about the primary tools they use in their workflow and their day-to-day, and then it'll kind of open it up a little bit, and we're going to look at how the dynamic of using specific things and how you make choices kind of works. So Chad, I'm actually going to start from the other end. Matt, what are the primary tools you use in your day-to-day work? And that can be either in the software or coding element or actually people tools as well.
Yeah, so I like to think that we're a sort of a prototype to product shop. To name one, Cardo SQL API allows us to really prototype quickly web applications and really test things out to make sure that they're working correctly. So we use that a lot, and like I said, the SQL API, but also since Postgres is sort of the underlying database for Cardo, we're able to really do a lot of complex data manipulation for our web applications on the fly. So that really helps our work. Those are the sort of primary tools, along with JavaScript and Ember.js and so on.
Yeah, and so you pretty much everything you do is in code, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and so you don't really use any sort of out-of-the-box tools. I mean, Cardo, in some ways, you probably just to get data in, you do, but you really just work completely in sort of a text
all
day long?
I secretly haven't used Builder in a long time.
That's really okay. Yeah.
We use Engine most of the time, and so yeah, those are.
Has everybody seen Zola that the Planning Labs has released, the zoning list? So you've had some nice successes today. We've seen on Twitter. You've released a couple of new tools, and then there's a talk also that they're doing tomorrow about their work. Didi, I'm going to switch to you. So you talk about the tools you use kind of every day.
So I think for us, like it's less about tools and more about the job. So if I'm gonna fix my car, for example, I don't pick my workflow based on what wrenches I have. I think that, for us, the requirements of the job are often undefined because we work in a lot of unknowns, and preparing for the unknowns. I think that the key for us is that things are scalable and the tools are scalable and flexible, meaning that, although I'm Dee Dee and I'm an analyst and I have my own, art and craft that I do with data every day, in an emergency, I am my role. And so I need to be able to stop doing my work and then train up my replacement very, very quickly to do exactly the same job I've just done exactly as well. We use Cardo because it's quick, it's easy to train people up, and it's fast, right? It's really fast. We have a very large instance of Tableau Server that is internal, deployed at the health department, and we have a large user group. We use a lot of R, and I know that people are using R Shiny quite a bit for maps. And of course, we use Esri as well.
So in that situation, when people are using, are they switching between those tools, or are they using kind of one and then porting to another tool, or is it really kind of, are they each discretely used on Teams?
Yes.
And that's a really weird general question.
Yes, all of
Okay.
those things.
Yeah, I got it. And so ideally, would they all kind of sync up and work together, and how, like, what would that workflow?
Yeah, ideally you would do something in one tool, whatever way it exists in one tool. Maybe it's easier, for example, to use Esri because another city agency uses Esri, and then if that didn't work based on the job, you would sort of seamlessly transition to the next project.
Right, and so since you're in emergency situations, that seamlessness is kind of important, and needs to, like you said, needs to be scalable. So an optimal workflow for you would be one where you could switch quickly between things and kind of and get the end.
Or even do it, even use them simultaneously, I think would be the ideal.
Got it. Okay, so Chad, let's talk to you.
So SEMCOG is a planning organization for the Southeast Michigan region. And so we collect a lot of data, and one of the things that I need to do is make that data accessible to our members and to the public. And the reason is because a lot of it ends up in a format that may not be that usable or interesting to look at. So we use Cardo a lot to create custom web maps so that we can make that data more interactive so that you can filter it to your county or community. That's really important to our members so that they can really dive into their local community to see what's going on there. Like, for example, like traffic volume or crashes. They really like to be able to get information for just their community. So we use Cardo, and we use the ability to write custom SQL to get that job done. But we also use other tools as well. So our staff, we need to be flexible. So some staff are comfortable in other tools like ArcGIS Online. So we will also use that to make maps online where it makes sense. Besides that, we use other Esri products as well for doing GIS analysis, but mostly on the web side, we're mostly just using Cardo.js to create our custom web maps.
So part of this is not just software tools, but also sort of how you work with people. So there's project management, and there's all kinds of development processes. And each of you has some interesting ways that you work in your process. You actually work in paired programming.
Yes.
Right. So you want to talk a little bit about how you do that every day?
Yeah.
Every Tuesday. Actually.
Yeah. So so before I sort of brought the concept of paired programming to SEMCOG just because I've done it in previous jobs and really enjoyed it.
Who's heard of paired programming here? Who's actually done it? Okay, great.
So paired programming is basically just a concept to two or more people will sit and look at the same computer and do programming together. It's a really cool way to collaborate on projects because you get a big you get different perspectives from people, and it's kind of fun, actually. And so before I came to SEMCOG, nobody was really doing that, but I'm using it a lot for getting projects done that otherwise wouldn't be able to get done.
And that's because of the boost it gives that you get by working with someone else and kind of learning from, you work with Jacob, and
Yes.
Jacob's knowledge kind of gets fed into your workflow.
Exactly, and then we can go off on our own and kind of work on different pieces of the project and bring that back to our Tuesday paired programming every week. It's something I look forward to every week.
And so it
actually.
provides a little bit of growth and a little bit of
Yes,
getting stuff
yes,
done.
and it also is helpful for keeping everybody on the same page. We're all looking at the same code base. We all know what's going on, and that's really helpful for us.
Great. Do you want to talk about stuff that you're doing internally?
Sure. So in my unit, we don't do paired programming because there's 2 of us. Our entire unit is in this room right now. There is no risk and analytics getting done at emergency preparedness today. But I think that that would be an ideal for us. The other thing is that right now we're a unit of 2 people who come to work every day and then work. Our collaboration's a little. I mean, we collaborate, but it's a lot more informal than paired programming. But in a disaster, I don't know what team I'm going to have, and I don't know who's going to be there, and so. It's not paired programming. I think that would be an ideal, but certainly like scalable, flexible collaboration is something that is.
And you have to be ready for a lot of randomization, probably too, right?
Yeah.
And so, how do you deal with that? How do you're sitting there doing something that's kind of productive, and all of a sudden, something happens, and you have to kind of shift modes, and that can be kind of hard.
Yeah, and I think again, it's like I feel like in emergencies. Yeah, there's a lot of things happen very, very quickly. So I think that the thought and the design is a lot of the questions go away because the needs, like there's a mandate that is very urgent on you.
Which puts pressure on the preparedness part beforehand, building the infrastructure.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that's very important to us, again, not paired programming, but is in building the infrastructure that feeds the work we do in a disaster. We do use agile methodologies with frequent UATs, monthly UATs, iterative improvement in sprints, and so that's, for the last couple of years, like all of our projects have fit into that model.
Great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like in city planning, the time span is a little different, and so, but we also have sort of, thinking about like responding to, our internal customer needs very quickly is really important. In terms of like collaboration, it's really nice to be able to train our customers, who we build web applications for. It's really nice to be able to train them on how to update the data behind the app, for example. So a lot of our customers are able to just kind of log in to our Cardo system and maintain the data, which is, we like to say it's empowering the customer, but it's really just saves us time. So, which I really like. So, yeah.
So you do sprints. You do, and you do weekly sprints, is that right?
Yeah. So we do every week. We set up a sprint if we're on a project for, say, like community engagement division, or for the population division, we're doing an app for them on a tool for aggregating data. We set up our sprint. We set up what the main priorities and tasks are, and then at the end of the week on Friday, we demo what we have, and so. Being able to quickly spin up, an API for a data set is really helpful. We don't have to sit around and kind of, there's some REST endpoints, and so yeah.
So the last question, then we can either open it up or have a discussion, is With all of these things that we've just talked about, keeping people trained is probably kind of a difficult thing, and you have to kind of how do you keep people trained in all of these processes? Or are there methods that you've used, or is it just really just kind of hitting it head on to start somebody on a process or a tool that you need to have them use? And let's see. Actually, Didi, I'll be more specific with you. You have to have people be incredibly ready. So someone starts, something could happen the next day. And there's a term you use for emergencies that you can't tell when they're coming.
No notice.
No notice emergencies, right. So you have to have somebody on a no notice emergency just be ready to kind of go. Are there tactics that you use to kind of make sure people are ready, or is it just that you have to choose what you do better, like what you actually implement?
Well, and I think this sort of speaks to infrastructure building, right? Like people are resources, skills are resources, and so the emergency use case has given us the leverage to sort of train outside of our division and train outside of even the health department. And so I think the two of the things that I would say is that, like, one is just you have to pick a tool that you don't have to have a PhD to use, right? Another thing is that your training should, as best as possible, be portable, right? So it can be reused and used for, and so that the skills can be used for day-to-day work. So actually, this past year, I'll say that we did it with Jeff, but really Jeff did it, and we made snarky comments about it and distributed it. But we developed a training on the Cardo builder interface. You're free to use it if you want, Matt.
What is it called again? I'm just kidding.
It's called. So it's we did a hurricane map, and we actually piloted it for hurricane season last year. But it's a 20-minute it's a PDF and a video, and you can learn how. Like, I'm confident that a person who goes through that 20 minutes could certainly make me a Cardo map in an emergency.
And that's kind of helpful for you. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. So so we basically released a lesson last year that kind of led people through a PowerPoint. And then I recorded a video of how to take the hurricane zones and drop them on a map and make a hurricane map that you could basically just be ready for hurricane season. When it came, people could be ready to go. And it was really great to make. But it kind of showed, and I'm going to advertise for Cardo, obviously, since we're at our conference, it showed the power of how you can get up and running really quickly, which obviously helps when you're training people for an emergency. And so we did that together. So with Chad, with you, with the JavaScript that you work a lot in JavaScript and you have a lot of coding. What's when you bring new people into the team, how much skill in that do they have to already have, or can you get somebody up and running do you require a heavy amount of JavaScript skill and coding and HTML and CSS and all that?
I would say no, we don't, since I don't have much experience in it. But
so you started with not much experience, and you are where you are now. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
So the big thing with our group is just making sure that we communicate with each other about what's going on in the project. That's like really our main thing that helps us for training. I think the cool thing about like bringing on new people is that even if they don't have like programming skills, like they can still help with testing a product. Like they can find bugs, or they can test it in different browsers, and that's actually like what has happened with our newest person that was just hired. Like, he doesn't really have any JavaScript skills, but he does have a computer science background, so he understands how the logic should work and how it should work in a browser, and it's come to be very helpful. But yeah, so I mean, I guess to answer your question, no, you don't. It's really just like we'll teach anybody.
Do you bring him into your paired programming sessions to watch?
Yep.
And so he carefully stays there and watches what you do.
Exactly.
And then learns a little bit from that.
Yep.
Right. Matt, if someone new were to start tomorrow, could you get them doing what you do? I mean, you're actually a really skilled developer, and I mean, I've watched you work, and it's incredible. But it's
And he does actually know how to use Cardo Builder. Now I feel bad.
how would you get somebody like that ramped up or worked into the system, and what would be maybe the concerns there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because we're
About to do it,
hire.
probably.
We're trying to get more people involved in get more people on our team. And so, you know, I mean, it comes down to, like, you know, over the past several years, we've used web frameworks to really help kind of organize the code, especially in JavaScript. If you've ever used JavaScript and you've ever looked at someone else's JavaScript code outside of a framework, you might have no idea what is going on because, I mean, at least at an organization level, like you know, everyone has their special snowflake way of solving a problem, and JavaScript's so flexible and wild that you can kind of do anything you want with it. So, you know, we work with Ember and React, which are both frameworks for JavaScript, and these frameworks embrace certain patterns in programming that make it easy for people to understand. Whenever they come on board, they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's the view and that's the model, and so you kind of know generally where things are and where things are going. And I think bringing someone on board and training, it's really about, like, what is our kind of, you know, server setup? What is relying on Cardo? Like what server infrastructure is running our web applications? And, you know, kind of what is our process in GitHub, and, you know, opening
And that's kind of the
issues
critical
and
stuff. And
Yeah.
this city, you probably all thought it was going to be about smart cities, but this is smart cities right here, because I see the inner workings of a lot of agencies and a lot of government clients every day, and really it comes down to this. This is really where the magic happens, because the workflows that you choose and how you actually approach them and how you do with starting paired programming is such a great idea. And these teams kind of function really nicely. And there are lessons to be taken back from all of this. And I think when you see good things coming from cities, it's usually individuals or individual teams that make things happen. And these are just 3 examples of that I've seen. So I'm going to let you guys make some final comments if you want to, or anything that you've thought of, and then we'll open it up to comments. Does anybody want to jump in with anything? Okay, let's take some questions then. We have about 7 minutes from what I can see.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of pair programming, and I just find like it eliminates so many bugs and is so much more effective. And it also creates redundancy when someone leaves. You've got someone who's intimate with all the code stuff. However, upper management frequently does not like it because they see it as a waste of time.
What?
And so it's really hard, it's really, really hard to convince upper management to do pair programming. And then there's also the other thing I've noticed is many programmers are a little self-conscious to get into a pair programming environment. And it takes quite a while for them to loosen up and be comfortable with not knowing the answer right away and stuff. How have you gone about both the upper management issue and the self-conscious programmer issue?
So I'll answer the second piece first. I think just being a newbie to JavaScript has allowed me to just get rid of any self-consciousness. I mean, if you don't know anything, you can't be self-conscious about it. But to answer your first question, I'm lucky to just have very flexible bosses that allow me to take the time to do that. I mean, we have a paired programming session that actually has 4 people in it. So think about that. I mean, four people working for like an hour and a half to 2 hours each week is kind of a big commitment for that staff. And I think the reason they let us keep going is because we're making the products they want that they probably wouldn't have seen before. Just like, I think that we've created a web map called Park Finder. It's basically something you can use to find different amenities nearby you, like basketball courts or like soccer fields. Just the fact that we were able to get that done and accomplished using paired programming, I think it's kind of, they get it. Like they understand that it's the tool that we need in order to get these products created. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, at least in my experience, has always been like, at least for upper management, make the business case for it or whatever. But also, like, a lot of successful teams do it. I mean, it's a very common practice, and you can point to those successful teams and say, oh, wow, well, they're doing this, practice, and why aren't we doing it? I think that's actually very convincing.
Envy is the key.
Envy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't really do it, so.
But you have other
And Ken
things.
was asking the question because Ken is also from the health department. But I think one of the things that I think related to that issue is that if somebody is watching you through your design and through your initial process and through your code, that adds a level of transparency internally.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's not just the business cases, because I think you could make a pretty reasonable argument about efficiency and catching bugs and stuff, but I wonder if there's also a fear of transparency,
Makes a lot
and
of sense.
transparency starting from the very beginning of your process.
Because it could expose weak processes across the organization.
I mean, we recently embraced test-driven development and took a really
Do you want to explain what that is? 'Cause
Oh, yeah, sorry. The idea of test-driven development is you write a failing test. A test is you write code that tests something in your application. So you write a failing test, and then you change your code to get it to pass, and then you move on and refactor or whatever. It takes a long time to do, but it's something that we needed to practice. So these things take time and practice. You don't just start test driving, developing out of the gate. You don't start pair programming if you've never done it before and expect it to be perfect. So.
Go ahead.
Hi. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
With the mic.
If I could just quickly ask for advice as someone who feels pretty confident using user interface and a lot of the out-of-the-box features of GIS software, what skills do you think are the logical next step if I wanted to be doing more complex kinds of spatial analyses?
I can give you an annoying answer.
do it.
The annoying answer is that, what does they say? Spatial is not special. I think that being able to use a tool is critical and important, right? But I think being able to ask and answer questions is more important, and so.
Data is data.
Data is data, and do the same. I don't know, for me, when I learned learning different programming languages, for example, or even learning different tools, informs what I do in Cardo, for example, because I push it to do different things. That was a pretty annoying answer, I'm sorry.
There's a question you're asking how to learn about spatial analysis itself. How do you go kind of deeper into spatial analysis? Because that's fun. I mean, we all want to do that more. I want to do that every day. And go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking. How do I move beyond just scaling functions? The things that come out of the drawing. What do you recommend if I want to start looking at doing what?
I think one thing that's really interesting, a talk that I was just at, is Cardo frames. I think that can allow you to go really, really deep. I mean, it would require a little bit of knowledge about Python and about pandas, the statistical package in Python, but that's something I could see being really powerful, and it seems relatively easy to get started just because you can use those Jupyter notebooks. And Google's your friend. I mean, if you have something you want to do, there's probably someone else that's already done it. So yeah, that would be my advice.
We can take the world's fastest question.
All right.
So I see a varying degree of in-house versus buying software, and I was just wondering what's the decision process for your organizations to either go in and do something in-house, like in planning, or maybe buy some software and just outsource it to a software company?
That's a great question. Who wants to take it?
You should probably go first.
Go.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, we have a perspective that I have a perspective, that okay, we are going out of house too much for things that don't solve the problems that we need solved, and it costs too much money, taxpayer money. So the idea is that, like, I mean, our team in city planning is kind of an experiment. It's not that experimental. I mean, lots of agencies, lots of private businesses all over the place do this, have in-house teams like this. And so, we're biting off small bits. We're kind of pulling tools that were sent out, and rebuilding them in-house and seeing where we can go from there. So,
Cool.
longer conversation.
I think we're going to stop there. That's a great question. And we'll all be at the networking event, so if you want to ask that in more detail, you can. So I thank everybody, and we'll see you upstairs at the happy hour after the next talk.